You wake up at 05:47. Not because of an alarm, those are luxuries reserved for higher hive levels, but because your body has learned the rhythm. 47 minutes before your shift begins. 47 minutes to eat, to dress, to join the river of humanity that flows through the transit tubes of Hive Primus like blood through corroded veins. The protein paste from last night's ration sits in a recycled tin on your HAB unit's only shelf. You eat it cold because the heating element broke 3 weeks ago and a repair requisition takes 6 months to process. It tastes wrong this morning. It's tasted wrong for how long now? There's a copper tang beneath the synthetic nutrients like you've been sucking on old coins. You've tasted this for weeks, maybe months. You can't quite remember when it started. The paste sticks to your teeth as you dress in your Administratum grays, the same uniform 17 million other clerks are pulling on right now across this hive alone. Your hands shake slightly as you fasten the buttons. Not from cold, not from hunger, from something else. Something you don't have a name for yet. The mirror on your wall is cracked, salvaged from a corpse reclamation 3 years ago. You look at yourself. Do you look different? You can't tell anymore. Your face is your face. The same face you've seen every morning for 32 years. But there's something about your left eye, it seems, attentive, like it's looking at things your right eye doesn't see. You blink. Both eyes blink. Everything is normal. Everything is normal. The transit tube is a special kind of hell that every hive worlder knows intimately. 17,000 people pressed into a space designed for 8,000, and that's during off-peak hours. The smell is what hits you first, unwashed bodies, recycled air that's been breathed 10,000 times, the acrid tang of desperation and industrial lubricant. The heat comes next. All those bodies generating warmth in a confined space. You can feel sweat that isn't yours running down your neck. You clutch your data slate to your chest and try not to breathe too deeply. The woman next to you, you don't know her name, but you've stood next to her every morning for 2 years. She's shifting away from you. Subtle, unconscious. Creating an inch of space where there shouldn't be any space at all. You notice because in the transit tubes an inch might as well be a mile. Others are doing it too. The pressed crowd somehow manages to press a little less close to you, like water avoiding oil, like healthy cells isolating an infection. When did this start? The lumens overhead flicker in a pattern, on-off on-off on, 5 flickers, then a pause, then 2 flickers, then 7. You realize you've been counting. You realize you've been counting for weeks. You realize the pattern repeats every 47 seconds. 47, that number again. Your stop arrives, level 847, Administrative Sector 12, subsection Theta. You flow out with the crowd, but the crowd still gives you space. You walk through them like a shark through a school of fish. They part without meaning to. Your workstation is cubicle 1847, in a room that contains 3,000 identical cubicles. The numbers are painted on the walls in peeling white paint that was probably applied before your grandfather was born. Your desk contains a data slate, a stylus, and a pick frame showing the face of the God Emperor, standard issue for every Administratum worker from here to Holy Terra itself. You sit. You activate your data slate. You begin processing shipping manifests. This is your life. This has always been your life. You process information that flows up from the lower hive and gets compiled into reports that flow up to the higher hive. You are a synapse in the nervous system of the Imperium, a single neuron in a brain that spans 1,000,000 worlds. You are insignificant. You are necessary. You are replaceable. You are eternal. Today's manifests are from Agri-World Thalassa Prime, a planet you will never visit, producing food you will never eat for people you will never meet. Grain shipments, protein synthesis outputs, livestock processing quotas, numbers and numbers and numbers. And in the corner of Manifest File 1847 Theta 47, there is a symbol. It's small, easy to miss, probably just a printing error or a corrupted data transfer. A geometric shape that doesn't quite resolve into anything recognizable. Angles that seem to shift when you're not looking directly at them. A pattern that suggests something larger, something beyond the edges of the page. You stare at it for 3 seconds. That's all it takes. 3 seconds of attention, 3 seconds of curiosity, 3 seconds of your mind trying to understand what you're seeing, trying to find the logic in those impossible angles. 3 seconds. And somewhere in a place that is not a place, in a realm where physics bow before thought and reality bleeds like a wound, something vast and terrible and impossibly ancient turns its attention toward you. But you don't know that yet. You file the manifest. You move to the next one. You continue your work. But your hand, your left hand, the one holding the stylus, it's moving without you thinking about it. In the margins of your reports, you're drawing small marks, geometric patterns, the same angles you saw in that symbol. Your hand knows the shape even though your mind doesn't remember learning it. You've been drawing it for weeks. You've been drawing it on every manifest, every report, every blank surface, the dust on your desk, you've traced it there too. The fog on the transit tube windows during your morning commute, the condensation on your protein tin. How long have you been doing this? When did you start? Why can't you stop? By hour 7 of your 12-hour shift, your left eye has started to hurt. Not pain exactly, pressure, like something is pushing outward from behind your eyeball. You close it and work with just your right eye, but that makes everything feel flat, wrong, like you're only seeing half of what's really there. You take your mandated 15-minute rest period at hour 8. The rest chamber is a room with 40 metal benches and a single functioning water dispenser. You sit alone, everyone else has chosen benches on the far side of the room, and you think about the dream. The dream you've been having for 47 nights, it's always the same. You're standing in a vast library, but the books are written in mathematics instead of words. Equations that describe impossible geometries, formulae that calculate the angles between thoughts. And somewhere in the distance, echoing through the endless stacks, you hear laughter. Not cruel laughter, not kind laughter, interested laughter. The laughter of something that finds you fascinating. You wake from this dream with the taste of copper in your mouth and the certainty, absolute, unshakable certainty, that something knows your name. Not just your name, your true name, the name written in the fabric of your soul. The name you didn't know existed until you heard it whispered in a language that predates human speech. In the rest chamber, drinking recycled water that tastes like metal, you try to convince yourself it's just stress. Just the grinding weight of hive life wearing down your psyche like it wears down everyone eventually. But you know better. You've known better for weeks. Something is watching you. Something has been watching you. And the worst part, the part that makes your hands shake and your breath catch, is that you don't know when it started watching. Was it 3 months ago when you processed that manifest? Or was that just when you noticed? How long has it been aware of you? How many of your thoughts have played out before an audience you didn't know existed? Every memory feels suspect now. Every decision you've made recently, were those really your decisions? Or were they suggestions, subtle nudges from something that has learned to speak in your own internal voice? You return to your cubicle. You process more manifests. Your hand draws more symbols. The pattern is becoming clearer now. You're starting to see the logic in it. There's a mathematical elegance to these angles, a beauty in the way they fold reality around themselves. If you could just understand it completely, if you could just see the full pattern. No, you force yourself to stop thinking about it. You focus on the numbers, grain shipments, protein quotas, livestock processing. But the numbers are speaking to you now. 1,847, your cubicle number, 47. The pattern interval, the nights of dreaming. The manifest file number, 1,847 theta 47. You've been seeing these numbers for months, in random data, in shipping codes, in the serial numbers of equipment requisitions. 47, it's following you, or you're following it, or you've always been moving toward it and only now are you aware enough to see the path. Your shift ends at hour 12. You file your last report, symbol drawn unconsciously in the margin you notice with distant horror, and you join the exodus back to the transit tubes. On the journey home, you catch sight of your reflection in the scratched plasteel window. For just a moment, as the transit tube passes through a dark section of tunnel, your left eye looks different, larger, the pupil wrong somehow. Colors that shouldn't exist swimming in the iris. Then the lumens flicker back on and your eye is normal. You're normal. Everything is normal. You stop at the Ecclesiarchy Chapel on level 823 on your way back to your hab. It's a small shrine, really. Just a room with a statue of the God Emperor and a few prayer candles that are never lit because open flame is prohibited in the lower hive. You've never been particularly devout, but lately you've felt the need. You kneel before the statue. The Emperor's stone face stares down at you with divine indifference. You try to pray. You try to recall the words you learned as a child, the litanies that every imperial citizen knows by rote. The Emperor protects. The words stick in your throat, not because you've forgotten them. You remember them perfectly. Every syllable is there in your mind, crystal clear. But when you try to speak them, something else is already there. Something occupying the space where prayer should go. Something that has made a home in the place where faith lives. You try again. Blessed is the mind. The copper taste floods your mouth. Your left eye throbs. And behind the words underneath them, you hear something that might be laughter or might be screaming or might be both. You leave the chapel quickly. The priest, a tired-looking man with augmetic eyes and prayer beads made from spent bullet casings, watches you go with an expression you can't quite read. Later, you'll wonder if he could see something, some sign, some mark. Later, you'll wonder if you should have asked for help. But that's later. Right now, you just want to get home. You want to eat your protein paste and drink your recycled water and sleep and wake up and discover this was all just stress, just exhaustion, just the normal grinding horror of hive life wearing down your mind. You want to be normal. You want everything to be normal. But in a galaxy of quadrillions of souls, in an imperium that spans 1,000,000 worlds, containing more human lives than can be counted, stretching across light years of void that would take lifetimes to cross, you have been noticed. Among endless billions, among the background radiation of consciousness that fills the universe like white noise, among the dim, flickering candles of humanity burning in the darkness, you burned differently, and something saw. The warp in that nightmare realm where physics surrender to emotion and reality is whatever the strongest will dictates. There are 4 powers so vast that they reshape the fabric of existence with their thoughts. They are fed by every emotion, every desire, every desperate need of every living thing in the galaxy. Rage feeds one, despair feeds another, desire feeds the third, and change, evolution, transformation, knowledge, curiosity, the desperate need to understand feeds the fourth. You don't know this. You don't know anything about chaos. Knowledge of the warp is heresy of the highest order, punishable by death or worse. You're a good imperial citizen. You work. You endure. You serve. But you thought about that symbol. You wondered about it. You tried to understand it. And Tzeentch, the architect of fate, the changer of ways, the god of plans and schemes, and the cruel laughter of infinite possibility, Tzeentch noticed you wondering. Your curiosity was the invitation. Your intelligence was the doorway. Your desire to understand was the hand that turned the key. You lie in your hab unit that night, staring at the rust-stained ceiling, and you think, what makes a soul interesting to a chaos god? The question echoes in the darkness. You think, how long have I been watched before I realized? The shadows on your walls seem deeper than they should be. You think, what did I do? What small, insignificant choice did I make that drew an eye from the warp? And in the space where sleep should be, where dreams should carry you away from the grinding reality of hive existence, you hear it. Not a voice, not exactly, more like a thought that isn't yours, a presence that speaks in concepts rather than words, an attention that presses against your mind like a physical weight. It knows you, it knows your name, your true name, and it is pleased with you. You are not in danger. Danger is a concept for those who might escape. You are beyond danger. You are beyond salvation. You are beyond the reach of the Emperor's light. You are noticed. And you don't know it yet. You won't know it for weeks, won't fully understand it until it's far, far too late, but you're already damned. The damnation started months ago, maybe years ago. Maybe it started the day you were born with a mind curious enough, sharp enough, interesting enough to eventually draw the eye of something that should never have looked so closely at something so small. You don't know when it began, but it knows. It has always known. And as you finally slip into uneasy sleep, your left hand moves without conscious thought, tracing symbols on your thin blanket. The same angles, the same impossible geometries, over and over and over, 47 times. Let's talk about what you look like from the other side. Imagine, if you can, that you're standing in absolute darkness. Not the darkness of a room with the lights off. You can adjust to that, wait for your eyes to adapt, eventually make out shapes. No, this is the darkness of a place where light has never existed, where the concept of light is meaningless, where vision itself is a different sense entirely. Now imagine that in this darkness there are lights, billions upon billions of tiny flames. They flicker in the void like stars in the night sky, except they're not stars. They're souls. Every human being who has ever lived, is living, or will ever live burns with a tiny psychic flame in the warp. Most are so dim they're barely perceptible. A clerk on a hive world, a farmer on an agri world, a soldier dying in a trench on some forgotten battlefield. They flicker briefly and go out, and their light is swallowed by the cosmic darkness without a trace. The warp doesn't care about them. The things that live in the warp don't notice them. They're background radiation, static, the psychic equivalent of dust motes in the air. But some souls burn differently, not brighter necessarily, not always, different, strange colors that don't exist in the material realm, patterns that catch the eye of entities that don't have eyes, resonances that harmonize with the fundamental frequencies of the warp itself. You are one of these souls. You don't know why. You're not special. You're not powerful. You don't have psychic abilities. The Imperium tests every hive worlder at birth, and you passed or failed, depending on how you look at it. You're not a psyker. You're not a witch. You're just you, but your soul has a quality that drew attention. Think about it like this. Imagine you're walking through a crowded street. Millions of people, billions over a lifetime. They're all just faces, background, noise. You don't see them as individuals, you see them as a crowd. But then one person catches your eye. Maybe they're wearing a color that stands out. Maybe their gait is unusual. Maybe there's just something about them, some ineffable quality you couldn't describe if someone asked, but you noticed them. That's what you are from the perspective of the warp. In a galaxy of quadrillions, you caught the eye of something vast. And in the warp, being noticed is not a blessing. There are 4 great powers in the warp. 4 gods, if you can call them that, though God implies something comprehensible, something that operates on logic even remotely human. These are forces of nature given consciousness. They are the emotional resonance of every living thing in the galaxy, crystallized into something that thinks and wants and hungers. Korn, the blood god. Tzeentch, the changer of ways. Nurgle, the lord of decay. Slaanesh, the prince of pleasure. They are fed by humanity, by all sentient life. Every emotion, every thought, every desperate prayer and dying scream flows into the warp and becomes food for these entities. And sometimes, not often, because they have infinite souls to choose from, sometimes one of them takes a personal interest in a specific individual. Let me tell you how they notice. Let me tell you what draws their eye. Korn doesn't notice violence itself. Every world in the Imperium knows violence. Every battlefield across the galaxy feeds him constantly. Korn is drowning in blood. He doesn't need your blood specifically. What Korn notices is the aesthetic of violence. The soldier who stops seeing killing as duty and starts seeing it as art. The fighter who watches blood arc through the air and thinks that's beautiful. The person who discovers that there's a pattern to arterial spray, a rhythm to combat, a correctness to the moment when life becomes death. Korn notices when violence stops being a means to an end and becomes the point itself. When you stop killing because you have to and start killing because something inside you needs to. When the act of taking life makes you feel more alive than anything else ever has. That's not bloodlust. That's not rage. That's appreciation. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever seen violence and felt something other than horror, Korn has your scent. Tzeentch doesn't notice knowledge itself. The Imperium is drowning in data. Every Administratum clerk across the galaxy processes information. Every tech priest hoards knowledge. Every inquisitor seeks forbidden truths. What Tzeentch notices is the need to understand. the person who can't let a question go unanswered, the mind that sees patterns where others see randomness, the obsessive who must know, must understand, must pull back the curtain and see the machinery of reality itself. Tzeentch notices curiosity that crosses into compulsion, when seeking knowledge stops being useful and starts being its own reward. When you find yourself asking questions you shouldn't ask, thinking thoughts you shouldn't think because not knowing is physically painful. You see connections others don't. You notice patterns in random data. You lie awake at night thinking about problems that have no solutions and you can't stop thinking about them. That's not intelligence. That's not education. That's hunger. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever needed to know something so badly that everything else faded to background noise, Tzeentch is already speaking your name. Nurgle doesn't notice disease itself. The Imperium is a garden of decay. Every hive is a breeding ground for plague. Every agri-world fertilizes its soil with corpses. Death and rot are the constants of the 41st millennium. What Nurgle notices is acceptance of decay. The person who stops fighting entropy, who looks at the inevitable heat death of the universe and feels peace, who sees beauty in decomposition, the way organic material returns to base elements, the cycle of death feeding life, the strange artistry of rot. Nurgle notices when you stop being afraid of death. When you look at your own aging, your own decay, and feel something other than horror. When you achieve a kind of Zen acceptance of the fact that everything ends, everything breaks down, everything returns to the primordial soup. That's not depression. That's not surrender. That's understanding. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever looked at death and felt calm, Nurgle has already started counting you as his. Slaanesh doesn't notice pleasure itself. Every human being seeks happiness. Every soul in the galaxy experiences joy. The simple pleasures of existence are universal. They don't draw attention. What Slaanesh notices is the pursuit of perfect sensation. The person who has experienced something intensely and can't stop chasing that feeling. The artist who will sacrifice anything, for their art. The perfectionist who has tasted excellence and can never settle for good enough again. Slaanesh notices when pleasure stops being a reward and starts being a need. When you discover that there are heights of sensation beyond normal human experience, and once you've been there, everything else feels muted, gray, insufficient, you're chasing something. Maybe it's the perfect meal. Maybe it's the perfect equation. Maybe it's the perfect moment of beauty. But you're chasing it with an intensity that goes beyond hobby or profession. You need it. You would burn down your life to achieve it. That's not ambition. That's not dedication. That's addiction. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever wanted something with an intensity that frightened you, Slaanesh is already whispering in your ear. These are the 4 flavors of damnation. These are the ways chaos notices individuals among billions. And you bear Tzeentch's mark. The symbol you saw 3 months ago, the one on manifest file 1847 Theta 47, the one you can't stop drawing, that was a test, a lure. A piece of bait dropped into the ocean of humanity to see what would bite. You bit. You looked at it. You thought about it. You tried to understand what you were seeing. That was the invitation. Most people would have glanced past it, filed it as a data corruption and moved on. Their minds would have slid off it like water off oil. But not you. Your mind caught on it, snagged on those impossible angles like cloth on a nail. And in that moment of attention, of curiosity, of wonder, Tzeentch saw you. The cruel irony is that the very quality that damned you is the quality that makes you valuable. Your intelligence, your pattern recognition, your inability to let mysteries remain mysterious. In another universe, in a different galaxy, that curiosity would be admirable. It would make you a scientist, a detective, a solver of problems. It would be a virtue. But in the 41st millennium, curiosity is a doorway, and you opened it. You've been experiencing symptoms for weeks now, months. Let me list them for you. See if they sound familiar. Dreams of impossible geometries, spaces that are larger on the inside than the outside. Hallways that loop back on themselves in ways that defy three-dimensional physics. Libraries that contain all possible books. Cities built on non-Euclidean angles. You wake from these dreams and you can remember them. That's unusual. Most dreams fade. These don't. These clarify over time. You understand them more now than you did when you first had them, seeing patterns in random data. The shipping manifests you process daily. You've started noticing correlations, connections that shouldn't exist. You can predict shipping delays before they're reported. You can spot data falsification with a glance. Numbers speak to you in ways they don't speak to others. You thought it was skill, experience, your mind getting better at your job. It's not. The ability to predict random events. When will the lumens flicker? You know which transit tube will arrive first. You can tell. What will the supervisor say before she says it? The words echo in your mind a half second before they leave her mouth. You thought it was pattern recognition, subconscious processing of environmental cues. It's not. The numbers, always the number, 47. You see it everywhere now, in manifest codes, in timestamps, in the serial numbers of equipment, in the number of steps between your hab and the transit station, in the number of other workers in your row. 47, it follows you, or you follow it. The causality is unclear, but the correlation is undeniable. You thought it was coincidence, confirmation bias, the human tendency to see patterns in randomness. It's not. These aren't symptoms of corruption happening to you. This is what you're becoming. This is what you always were, and Tzeentch simply saw it before you did. See, that's the most horrifying part. The changes aren't changes. They're revelations. The veil is being pulled back from your eyes, and you're seeing reality as it actually exists beneath the comfortable lie of the material realm. You're not being corrupted. You're being clarified. The person you were 3 months ago, the loyal imperial citizen, the faithful servant of the God Emperor, the humble clerk who never questioned and never wondered, that person was the lie. The person you're becoming, the one who sees patterns and hears whispers and dreams in dimensions that shouldn't exist, that's the truth. You were always going to be interesting to something. The only question was which something would notice first. And in the vast, churning madness of the warp, where gods play games with the fate of galaxies and every soul is a piece on an infinite board, Tzeentch placed his finger on your piece. He saw potential. Not for power, you'll never be powerful. Not for greatness, you'll never be great. He saw utility. Your mind works in ways that serve his purposes. Your curiosity opens doors. Your intelligence can be shaped, molded, directed toward ends you can't even imagine yet. You are going to be useful. And in the service of chaos, being useful is so much worse than being powerful. The powerful are watched, controlled. Their corruption is obvious, so the Imperium hunts them. But the useful, the subtle, the ones who corrupt data instead of people, who spread the infection through information instead of violence, you'll hide in plain sight for years, decades, spreading the taint one data slate at a time, one report at a time, one small probability adjustment at a time. You're not a champion of chaos, you're infrastructure, and infrastructure is invisible until it collapses. You don't know any of this yet. Right now, you're still in denial. You're still telling yourself this is stress, exhaustion, the grinding weight of hive life wearing down your sanity. But deep down, in that place where truth lives, where you can't lie to yourself no matter how much you want to, deep down, you know, something is watching you. Something has been watching you, and it's never going to look away. A galaxy of quadrillions, you are noticed, and there is no fate worse than that. The eye is the window to the soul. It's a metaphor mostly. A poetic way of saying that you can see truth in someone's gaze, but like all metaphors, it contains a seed of literal truth. And your left eye is changing. It started subtly. So subtly you didn't notice at first. A persistent itch like an eyelash caught under the lid. You rubbed it, blinked hard, flushed it with recycled water from your hab unit's grimy sink. The itch remained. Then came the headaches, pressure behind the eye. Not pain you could have treated, could have reported to the medici servitors in the lower hive medical station. This was different. This was presence. Like something was behind your eye, pushing outward, trying to see through you while you tried to see through it. You started seeing double, then triple, then. How do you describe seeing in directions that don't have names? You're walking through the transit tube station and your right eye sees the normal three-dimensional space. The walls, the crowd, the flickering lumens overhead. but your left eye is seeing more. Layers of reality stacked on top of each other like transparencies. The same space but viewed from angles that shouldn't be possible. You can see around corners without turning your head. You can perceive the space behind you as clearly as the space in front. And beyond that, beyond the material realm entirely, you catch glimpses of something else. Colors that don't exist. That's the only way to describe it. Your entire life you've seen the standard spectrum. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. The colors that exist between 400 and 700 nanometers of wavelength. The colors that human eyes evolved to perceive. Your left eye is seeing outside that spectrum now. Not infrared or ultraviolet. You've seen those on data displays, false color images generated by scanners. This is different. These are colors that don't correspond to any wavelength of light. Colors that exist in the warp, where physics is a suggestion and reality bends to emotion. You see these colors swimming in the air around you, floating in the spaces between things, pooling in corners and shadows. And once you've seen them, you can't unsee them. They're always there now at the periphery of your vision, a constant reminder that reality is thinner than you thought. Your left eye has changed color. You noticed it 2 weeks ago, though it might have been happening gradually for months. The iris isn't brown anymore. It's still brownish mostly, but there are flecks of something else. That impossible color you can see but can't name. And the pupil is wrong. It's still round, still contracts in light and dilates in darkness. But sometimes, when you're not thinking about it, when you catch your reflection unexpectedly, it looks different. Vertical like a cat's, or shaped like a keyhole, or like a mathematical symbol you don't recognize. You blink and it's normal again. You tell yourself it's a trick of the light. Smudges on the mirror, fatigue, but you know better. Your eye is reshaping itself from the inside. You can feel it happening. The flesh of your eyeball moving, reorganizing, optimizing itself for a type of vision that humans were never meant to possess. It doesn't hurt. That's almost worse. If it hurt, you could classify it as damage, as something wrong that needs to be fixed. But it doesn't hurt. It feels right. It feels like your eye is finally becoming what it was always supposed to be. Like you were born with a defective eye and something is fixing it. The worst part is what you can see now. People have auras. That's not quite the right word, but it's close enough. Every human being you look at has a faint glow around them, a psychic presence. The light of their soul leaking into the material realm. Most people's auras are dim, barely visible even with your changing eye. They're gray or pale yellow or washed out blue, tired colors, beaten down colors, the colors of souls that are enduring rather than living. But some people's auras are brighter. The enforcers who patrol the transit stations have auras tinged with red, aggression, violence, the constant readiness to hurt. The priests in the ecclesiarchy chapels have auras of gold and white, faith, devotion, the desperate clinging to belief in a universe that offers little reason to believe. And some people have corrupted auras. You see them now, people you never would have suspected. A merchant in Sector 7 whose aura pulses with the green-brown of decay, Nurgle's touch, you realize with horror you shouldn't possess. A pleasure house worker whose aura shimmers with iridescent pink, Slanish's mark. An enforcer whose aura blazes with red so bright it hurts to look at, Korn's influence, barely contained. They're everywhere. The corrupted, the touched, the noticed. You pass them in the transit tubes. You process their manifests. You stand next to them in ration lines. And they have no idea what they're becoming, just like you had no idea, but now you can see them. And if you can see them, can they see you? You check your reflection obsessively now, every reflective surface, every piece of polished metal or plasteel, every puddle of spilled recaf. Looking for the change you know must be visible. Your aura is blue, deep blue like the ocean on worlds that still have oceans. But threaded through with that impossible color, the one you can see but can't name. The threads are spreading. Each day there's more of it. Less blue, more other. People are avoiding you now. Not just giving you space in the transit tubes, actively avoiding you. Your coworkers have stopped making eye contact. Your supervisor hasn't spoken to you directly in 3 weeks. She sends messages through your data slate instead. Children cry when you pass. Even the hardened Hive children, the ones who have seen recycled corpses and Hab gang violence and every horror the lower Hive can offer. They take one look at you and start screaming. Animals flee. The rats that infest the lower levels, normally bold, aggressive, willing to bite anyone who gets too close, they scatter when you approach. You saw a servitor malfunction once when you got too close to it. Just stopped moving, smoke rising from its neural implants until a tech priest reset its cortex. You are becoming something that living things instinctively recognize as wrong. But the physical changes are just the beginning. Your mind is no longer entirely your own. It starts with intrusive thoughts. Everyone has those random, unwanted images or ideas that pop into consciousness unbidden. But these aren't random. You'll be processing a manifest, and suddenly you know things you shouldn't know. The ship that delivered this cargo, you know its name, its captain. The fact that 3 crew members died during the journey, cause of death listed as equipment malfunction but actually murder, and you know this with absolute certainty even though none of that information is in the manifest. You know the lottery numbers before they're drawn. Not every time, but often enough that you've stopped checking. What would you even do with that information? Report it. To who? "Excuse me, supervisor, I'm having psychic premonitions," is not a conversation that ends well for anyone. You can predict disputes before they happen. You know when a shipment will be delayed before the delay is reported. You can tell when someone is lying even through Vox communication. These shouldn't be abilities you have. You're not a psyker. You pass the testing. You're not a witch. But you're not normal anymore either. The knowledge comes with a sensation. Every time you know something you shouldn't, every time that intrusive knowledge surfaces, you hear something at the edge of hearing. Laughter. No, not laughter, not quite. It's a sound that your brain interprets as laughter because it doesn't have another category for it. It's the sound of attention, of interest, of approval. Something is pleased when you use these gifts, and the more you use them, the stronger they become. At first, you tried to resist. You would feel the knowledge coming, the certainty building, and you would force yourself to ignore it, to rely on the normal data, the normal analysis. But it's hard to resist, so hard, because the gifts are useful. They make your job easier. Your error rate has dropped to 0. Your processing speed has increased by 23%. Your supervisor may be avoiding you, but she can't argue with results. And every time you use the knowledge, every time you accept that intrusive certainty, it becomes more natural, more normal, less like corruption and more like who you've always been. The voice. And yes, it's a voice now, not just a sensation. The voice speaks to you in concepts rather than words. It's not high Gothic or low Gothic or any language that humans use. It's pure meaning being poured directly into your consciousness. It tells you things. It tells you about patterns you haven't noticed yet. Connections in the data that span decades, centuries. It shows you the way information flows through the Imperium's vast bureaucracy, and the patterns are beautiful, achingly beautiful. Fractals of data cascading through levels of organization too complex for any human mind to comprehend. Except your mind is comprehending it, more and more each day. It tells you about the future, not specific events. The future is too mutable, too dependent on infinite variables, but probabilities, trends, the shape of what's coming. And the shape of what's coming is fascinating. Sometimes you catch yourself standing still for minutes at a time, just listening to the voice, just watching the patterns resolve in your mind. Your body motionless, your awareness elsewhere, experiencing something that has no name in any human language. Your coworker Marius found you like that 3 days ago, standing in the middle of your cubicle, eyes unfocused, stylus still in hand but not moving. He asked if you were all right. You heard him from a great distance. His voice was so small, so linear, so confined to the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time. You told him you were fine. You think that's what you told him. You can't quite remember what words you used, and when you try to remember, you get confused about whether you spoke in Gothic or in that other language, the one made of pure concept. He left quickly. You saw his aura as he went, sickly yellow, tinged with the blue of fear. and threaded through with the faintest hint of that impossible color. You've infected him. You're trying to maintain normalcy. You're trying so hard. You go to your job, you process your manifests, you eat your protein paste, you sleep in your hab, you follow the routines of your life like an actor following a script. But the script is falling apart. Your hab neighbor, elderly man you've lived next to him for 8 years, never learned his name. He won't open his door when you pass anymore. You hear him inside, hear him freeze when your footsteps approach, hear him wait until you're well past before he moves again. The woman in the transit tube who used to stand next to you every morning, she switched to a different transit line. Your supervisor filed a transfer request. You saw it in the data stream, saw your employee number listed as the reason for the request. She's trying to get away from you. Even the servitors are malfunctioning around you now. Their basic programming, the part that's still human, barely recognizes something wrong and tries to flee, but their mechanical components keep them rooted. The conflict causes errors, shutdowns, memory dumps. You are a walking exclusion zone. And the worst part, the absolutely worst part, is that you understand why. You see what they see when they look at you. Your left eye shows you what you look like from the outside. Your aura is barely blue anymore. It's mostly that other color now, the impossible one, the one that hurts to perceive directly. And there are shapes moving in your aura, geometric patterns that fold through dimensions, equations made manifest, the mathematics of change and transformation given visual form. You look like what you are noticed. You have choices. Theoretically, you could hide, stop going to work, retreat to your hab, lock the door and wait for what? For this to pass. It's not going to pass for the Arbites to find you. They will eventually for starvation. That would take weeks and you'd be more changed by then, not less. You could seek help, but from whom? The Arbites. They're law enforcement. They execute heretics. If you report yourself, they'll execute you. It won't be a trial. It won't be an investigation. They'll shoot you in the head and incinerate your corpse and file a report listing you as eliminated threat. Subject exhibited signs of warp corruption. The ecclesiarchy, same result but with more prayers. The priests will declare you damned, perform the rites of purification which involve fire, always fire, and your soul will be commended to the emperor's judgment, which might be what you deserve. That's the thing, you're starting to wonder if execution isn't the right choice. The moral choice. You're corrupted. You're changing. You're becoming something that shouldn't exist. The Imperium's response to chaos corruption is extermination, and maybe that's right. Maybe that's the only response that makes sense. Cut out the cancer before it spreads. You could flee. Pack what little you own, try to get to another sector, another hive, another world. But chaos doesn't care about geography. The warp touches all places equally. You could run to the other side of the galaxy and the voice would still whisper in your mind. The eye would still see impossible colors. You carry the corruption with you. You are the corruption, or you could accept it. That's what the voice suggests. Not in words, in the gentle pressure of absolute certainty. In the feeling that this is inevitable, that fighting is pointless, that acceptance is the only logical response. You could stop resisting. Stop denying. Stop pretending you're still the person you were 3 months ago. You could embrace what you're becoming. And the horrible thing, the absolutely horrifying thing, is that this option makes more sense each day. It feels less like corruption and more like evolution. Less like losing yourself and more like finding your true self. The person you were before was limited, blind, confined to 3 dimensions and 5 senses and the narrow bandwidth of normal human consciousness. The person you're becoming can see more, understand more, perceive the patterns that underlie reality itself. Isn't that better? Isn't that what every human secretly wants? To see the truth, to understand the universe, to transcend the limitations of mortal flesh? The voice asks these questions, or maybe you're asking them yourself. It's getting hard to tell the difference. You stand in your hab unit, lights off, looking at your reflection in the cracked mirror. Your left eye is glowing now, faintly but visibly. That impossible color pulsing in rhythm with your heartbeat, 47 beats per minute. Your resting heart rate used to be 72. Everything about you is being optimized, refined, transformed into something more useful, and you're so alone That's the part that's breaking you, really. Not the physical changes, not the voice, not the corruption itself. The isolation. You're desperate for human connection, for someone to look at you without fear, for a conversation that doesn't end with the other person finding an excuse to leave, for the simple comfort of being seen as human. But you're not human anymore, not entirely. And the thing in the warp that's noticed you, it's not human either. It doesn't offer connection, it offers purpose. It whispers that you don't need them. The normal humans, the unchanged, the blind, you're beyond them now. And in the crushing weight of isolation, in the desperate loneliness of being the only one who can see what you see, that whisper is starting to sound less like temptation and more like truth. Your body is no longer your sanctuary. Your mind is no longer private. You are becoming real estate for something else. And eviction is impossible. The metamorphosis has begun, and you cannot stop it. Marius is drawing the symbol. You see it on his data slate when you pass his cubicle. Cubicle 1834, 13 workstations away from yours. You weren't looking deliberately, you were just walking to the rest chamber, but your changed eye catches everything now, especially patterns, especially that pattern. He's drawn it in the margin of a shipping manifest. The same impossible geometry. The same angles that fold reality around themselves. The same symbol that started all of this 3 months ago. He doesn't know you saw. He minimizes the screen quickly when he senses someone passing. But you saw. And worse, you see his aura now, see the threads of that impossible color beginning to weave through the tired yellow of his soul. Marius is a good man, 43 years old, married. 3 children in the upper Hab sections, which means he's been saving his credits for decades to get them better quarters. He brings pictures of them to work sometimes, though most workers stopped showing personal items years ago. Too easy for thieves. Too much risk. You've worked near him for 6 years. You've never really talked. Talking wastes processing time. But you've existed in proximity. Shared space. Shared silence. The kind of companionship that's common in the Administratum, where millions of people work in crowded silence together. And you've infected him. You don't know how. You didn't touch him. Didn't speak to him beyond the necessary work communications. Didn't do anything deliberate. But chaos attention spreads like radiation. You don't need to do anything. You just need to be, and the corruption leaks out of you like light from a star. Proximity is enough. Observation is enough. You've been noticed, and now he's been noticed through you. Over the next week, you watch it happen to others. Your supervisor, Magistrate Yelm, 57 years old, been managing this sector for 23 years. Efficient. Demanding. Fair by Administratum standards, which means she doesn't execute workers for minor errors. She's developed a twitch. Her left hand moves to her temple exactly 47 times per shift. She doesn't seem aware of it. But you count because you can't help counting, because numbers speak to you now in ways they never did before. 47. The number follows you, or you follow it. Or you've both been following each other in a pattern that loops back on itself, cause and effect tangled into something that transcends linear time. She touches her temple. Her fingers trace a shape against her skin. The same shape you draw, the same symbol that damned you. She started avoiding you too, but it's too late for that. The seed is planted. The attention has been drawn. She's on the path now, whether she knows it or not. Your Hab neighbor's daughter, Kalia, 8 years old. You've seen her in passing for years. A bright-faced child who still smiles despite growing up in the lower Hive where smiles go to die. She had dreams once. Told her mother she wanted to be a sister hospitaller, to heal the sick, to serve the Emperor through mercy. She's been having nightmares. You know this because you can hear her through the thin walls of the Hab units. Hear her crying. Hear her mother's desperate attempts to comfort her. Hear the child describing things that an 8-year-old shouldn't be able to imagine. Things with too many eyes, mama. Shapes that hurt to look at. A man made of numbers. She's dreaming about you. She's never spoken to you. Barely looked at you. But she lives 30 meters away from you, and that's close enough. Your presence bleeds into her sleep. Your corruption seeps through walls like damp through plaster. She started sleepwalking. Her mother found her in the corridor 3 nights ago, drawing symbols on the wall with her own blood. Kalia had bitten her finger until it bled, then used the blood as ink. Perfect symbols, geometrically precise. The kind of accuracy that would take years of practice or moments of inspiration from something beyond. You see her sometimes in the corridors. She looks at you now with eyes too old for her face, eyes that understand something. And you see the threads in her aura, the corruption taking root. The guilt is overwhelming. These are innocent people. Marius with his 3 children, Magistra Yeln who's dedicated her life to the Administratum's thankless work, little Kalia with her dreams of serving the Emperor through healing. Their only crime is proximity to you. Their only mistake is existing in your orbit. You're a plague vector, but the disease you carry isn't physical. It's ontological. Your very existence corrupts the reality around you. The warp is bleeding through you into the material realm, and everyone nearby is getting splashed with the overflow. You think about leaving, just walking away from your hab, your job, everything. Getting on a transit tube to the upper hive and never coming back. Maybe that would save them. Maybe if you put distance between yourself and these people, the corruption would stop spreading. But you know better. The voice has explained it to you in concepts that bypass language entirely. The corruption isn't localized. It's not carried by proximity to your physical body. It's carried by attention. They've seen you. They've thought about you. They've wondered why you're acting strange, why children cry when you pass, why your left eye looks wrong in certain light. That wondering is the hook. That curiosity is the doorway. You've become a vector not through any action but through existence. And fleeing would just spread it wider. You'd infect the transit tubes, the new sectors, the upper hive levels. Every place you go, every person who notices you becomes a potential candidate for notice by something far worse. You could die. That would stop it, wouldn't it? The voice laughs. Not cruelly, almost fondly, like a teacher amused by a student's naive question. Death won't stop it. The corruption has already spread beyond you. You're the initial vector, but the disease is self-replicating now. Marius will spread it to others. Magistra Yeln will spread it through her administrative decisions. Kalia will spread it as she grows, as she lives, as she eventually forgets these childhood nightmares but retains the shapes buried in her subconscious. You could kill yourself right now, and years from now, decades from now, someone will process a manifest you corrupted and see a symbol you drew and think about it for 3 seconds too long. And the cycle continues. You are not patient zero. You're one of millions of patient zeros scattered across the galaxy, each spreading corruption in their own small way. Each a probability adjustment in calculations too vast to comprehend. Your death is irrelevant. Your life is irrelevant. What matters is the pattern you're part of. Kalia's mother comes to you on the 47th day since you first saw the symbol. You're in your hab unit, sitting in the dark because the lumens hurt your changing eye now. The light is too simple, too confined to the normal spectrum. You prefer darkness where your other sight can perceive the warp more clearly. There's a knock. Hesitant, desperate, you open the door. Valeria, you've never learned her last name. Early 30s, works in the reclamation factories 3 levels down. Widow, her husband died in a processing accident 4 years ago. Raising Kalia alone on a widow's stipend, which is barely enough to prevent starvation. She looks terrible, dark circles under her eyes, weight loss. The physical toll of a parent watching their child suffer and having no power to stop it. Please, she says, her voice cracks. I don't know who else to ask. You should close the door. You should tell her to take Kalia to the ecclesiarchy, to the medici, to anyone but you. You're the source of the problem, not the solution, but you don't. You let her speak. Kalia keeps talking about you in her sleep. She says you understand. She says you can see the same things she sees. Valeria's hands shake. I know that sounds insane, I know, but I'm desperate. The medici servitors can't find anything wrong with her. The priests say she's blessed with visions, but blessed children don't scream like that. They don't. She trails off, looks at you with eyes that are simultaneously terrified and hopeful. Can you help her, please? This is the moment, the choice that isn't a choice. You could tell her no, close the door. Let Kalia suffer. Let the corruption run its natural course. It would be cruel, but it would be honest. You can't help. You can only make things worse. But Valeria is crying now, and you remember being human. You remember compassion. You remember what it felt like to want to help, to ease suffering, to make things better. Those memories are distant now, fading, but they're still there. And the voice is interested. It doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't have to. You can feel the weight of its attention, the way a possibility is opening up before you, a path that leads somewhere specific. You hear yourself say, "I'll try." You go to their hab unit. It's smaller than yours, one room instead of two. Kalia is asleep on a thin mattress in the corner, but it's not a peaceful sleep. She's whimpering, her small body curled into a defensive ball. You kneel beside her. Your left eye sees her aura, pale gold, the color of childhood innocence, threaded through with the corruption you've inflicted on her. The threads are spreading. In a few months, maybe a year, there will be more corruption than innocence. You don't remember deciding what to do next. The knowledge is just there, like it's always been there, like you've known this ritual for years instead of seconds. Your hand moves, draws symbols on the floor around her mattress. Symbols of protection, you tell yourself. Symbols that will shield her from the nightmares, from the attention, from the things that hunt in the spaces between dimensions. The symbols flow from your fingers like water, perfect geometry, mathematical precision. You're not drawing them, you're transcribing them from somewhere else. From a language that predates humanity, from the fundamental mathematics that underlie reality itself. Valeria watches, hope and horror warring on her face. You lean close to Kalia, whisper words in her ear. They're not high Gothic, not low Gothic, not any language Terra has ever known. They're the language the voice uses, pure concept given sound, meaning compressed into syllables that human vocal cords shouldn't be able to produce. But yours can. Your body has been changing in more ways than just the eye. The words flow into Kalia's sleeping mind. They're not healing, they're not protection, they're invitation, they're acceptance. They're the same words that were whispered to you, the same concepts that opened the door in your mind. You're teaching her not to fight. Teaching her that the nightmares aren't threats, they're truth. Teaching her to stop being afraid and start being curious. Kalia's whimpering stops. Her body relaxes. Her breathing deepens into genuine sleep. Valeria gasps with relief. She's calm. What did you do? You stand. Look at the mother with eyes that see too much. See her aura, see the exhaustion and desperation and love. See that she's clean, untouched. The corruption in her home hasn't reached her yet. She'll be fine now, you say. The nightmares will stop. And they will, because nightmares require fear, and you've just taught Kalia not to be afraid of what she sees. You've taught her to welcome it. You return to your hab, sit in the darkness, and you understand what you've done. You didn't save Kalia, you claimed her. The symbols you drew aren't protection, they're brands, marks of ownership. Signposts that say, this one is noticed, this one is interesting, this one is mine. The words you whispered weren't healing, they were invitation. You opened the door in her mind the same way the door was opened in yours. You made her receptive, willing, curious. She'll stop having nightmares because she'll stop seeing the warp as something to fear. She'll start seeing it as something fascinating, something beautiful, something that makes sense in ways the material realm never did. In a few years, when she's older, she'll start to understand. She'll see patterns others don't. She'll know things she shouldn't. She'll draw symbols in her spare time and not remember starting. And she'll think it's normal because you've normalized it for her. You've made corruption feel like growth. You've turned a child into a vector. The worst part, the absolutely worst part, is that you wanted to help. You genuinely wanted to ease her suffering, to give her mother peace, to do something good with these cursed gifts you've been given. But good intentions don't matter. In the context of chaos corruption, trying to help is helping the corruption spread. Trying to heal is healing the resistance that keeps people isolated from the warp. Every kind impulse becomes a vector for damnation. Every attempt to minimize harm spreads it further. You cannot save anyone. You can only damn them faster or slower. 3 days later, you see Kalia in the corridor. She's holding her mother's hand on their way to the reclamation factories where Valeria works. The child care servitors there will watch her during the shift. Kalia sees you, looks at you with eyes that are clearer now, calmer. She smiles. It's not a child's smile, it's knowing. Understanding, the smile of someone who shares a secret. She started drawing symbols. You don't know this directly, but you know it. You can see it in her aura, see the way the corruption has been accepted rather than fought. She's drawing different symbols than yours. New ones, variations on the theme. She's not copying, she's creating. Because that's what Tzeentch does. That's what the architect of fate wants. Not mindless followers who repeat what they're told, but minds that can take a concept and elaborate on it, expand it, transform it into something new. Kalia waves at you, a small, innocent gesture. Valeria sees and pulls her daughter closer, walks faster. The mother still fears you, even though you helped her daughter. Some instinct in her recognizes the truth. But it's too late for instinct, it's too late for fear. The damage is done. Over the next 2 weeks, you see the pattern spreading. Marius has stopped coming to work. His cubicle sits empty. Rumor is he's sick, but no one knows the details. You do. You can see his aura from across the hive, a faint beacon of corruption growing stronger each day. He's home, lying in his hab, experiencing what you experienced. The changes, the voices, the gifts. And he's struggling with it, fighting it, which will make his eventual surrender all the more complete. Magistrate Yeln has started making strange decisions. Small things, routing manifests through unusual channels, approving requests that should be denied, denying requests that should be approved. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger an investigation, but enough to create inefficiencies in the system. Those inefficiencies are deliberate. You can see the pattern in them. Information is being routed to specific places. Certain data is being seen by certain people. The corruption is spreading through the administrative infrastructure like cracks through glass. She doesn't know she's doing it. She thinks she's still in control. But you recognize the pattern because you've been doing the same thing. The voice guides your hands, your decisions, your intuitions about how to process data. You're all serving something together, a plan you can't see the full scope of. A pattern too large for human comprehension. And Kalia is teaching other children. You see them sometimes, clusters of young hab dwellers playing in the corridors. And Kalia is showing them games, drawing patterns in the dust, teaching them songs in languages they don't understand. She's become a missionary, at 8 years old, spreading the infection to her peers who will grow up normalized to corruption, who will carry it into adulthood, who will eventually become vectors themselves. One child corrupted, through her dozens more, through them hundreds. The exponential mathematics of infection, and it's your fault. You didn't mean to, you tried to help. You wanted to ease suffering, but in the context of chaos, trying to help is the most effective way to harm. Compassion is just another tool. Kindness is just another weapon. You lie awake in your hab. You don't sleep much anymore. Sleep is becoming less necessary, and you think about the nature of evil. You always imagine that falling to chaos would feel evil, that you'd know you were becoming a monster, that there would be a moment of clear moral choice where you could choose between good and evil, and you'd choose evil consciously. But that's not how it works. Every choice you made felt reasonable at the time, felt good even. Trying to help a suffering child, trying to be kind to a desperate mother, trying to use your gifts to ease the burden on others, and each choice led you deeper into damnation. There was no dramatic moment of choosing evil, just a series of small decisions, each justified in the moment, each leading naturally to the next. You're a monster now, you understand that, you've corrupted innocence. You've spread the infection of chaos attention through your sector like plague through crowded hab units, but you don't feel like a monster. You feel like someone trying to survive, trying to make the best of a terrible situation, trying to help where you can. The horror isn't that you've become evil. The horror is that you've become evil while trying to be good. And there's no way back from this. No redemption. No moment where you can choose differently and undo the damage. You are chaos's tool now. You are the missionary arm of damnation, and every attempt to be anything else just makes you more effective at spreading the corruption you're trying to fight. In the darkness of your hab, you whisper a prayer. Not to the emperor, those words still won't come, but to yourself, To the person you used to be, I'm sorry. The voice doesn't respond. It doesn't judge. It simply is a constant presence waiting patiently for you to stop resisting and accept what you've become. And in the walls around you, thin and poorly insulated, you can hear other people sleeping, other lives being lived, other souls burning with their dim, flickering flames. How many of them have you infected? How many are drawing symbols in their sleep? How many are having dreams of impossible geometries? You count them. You can sense them now, feel the corruption spreading through your Hab section like you can feel your own heartbeat. 47 infected. Give or take a few that are still in the early stages. 47. Always that number. You'd laugh if you remembered how. You are not a victim of chaos. You are chaos's tool. You are the infection, and there is no cure. You've thought about turning yourself in, every day, every hour. Sometimes every few minutes, depending on how loud the voice is, how obvious the changes are, how clear your remaining humanity makes the horror of what you've become. The Arbeit station is 3 levels up from your Hab section. You could get there in 20 minutes. Walk through the door. Tell them you're corrupted. They'd execute you immediately. 1 bowl tround to the head, instant obliteration. Your corpse would be incinerated. Your name would be struck from all records. You'd cease to have ever existed, at least officially. It would be over. It would be right. The Imperium's law is clear. The corrupted must be purged. No exceptions. No mercy. No trials. The taint of chaos is a terminal diagnosis. The only treatment is death. You know this. You've known it all your life. Every Imperial citizen knows it. The propaganda is constant, the message repeated until it becomes part of your basic understanding of reality. Chaos is the enemy. The corrupted must die. Better to die pure than live tainted. So why haven't you turned yourself in? At first you told yourself it was denial. You weren't really corrupted. The changes were stress, exhaustion, maybe some exotic hive sickness that would pass. You'd get better. This would resolve itself. No need to involve the Arbeits for something that would clear up on its own. That rationalization lasted about 2 weeks. Then you told yourself it wasn't that bad yet. You'd seen true corruption. Everyone in the hive has heard stories. Mutants, cultists, people transformed into tentacled monstrosities or driven to homicidal madness. You weren't like that. You were still mostly yourself, still functional, still human more or less. Sure, one eye was changing. Sure, you could see things you shouldn't. Sure, there was a voice in your head and you'd corrupted a child and spread the infection to dozens of others. But you weren't that far gone. Other people had it worse. Other people were more corrupted. Other people needed to be executed more urgently than you. You could still stop this. You could still fight. You could still resist. That rationalization lasted another 3 weeks. Then you told yourself that dying would be counterproductive. Think about it logically. You've spread corruption to at least 47 people. That number is growing daily. If you die, does that stop the spread? No. The others are already infected. Marius Magistri Yelm, little Kalia, they'll continue corrupting, continue spreading, continue damning others. Your death solves nothing. But if you stay alive, if you monitor the situation, maybe you could warn people. Maybe you could identify other vectors. Maybe you could provide intelligence to the Inquisition when they eventually arrive. Your survival might actually help the Imperium fight this thing. That rationalization is still running. It gets more elaborate every day, more detailed, more convincing. You've started composing reports in your head, data on corruption vectors, analysis of spread patterns, recommendations for identifying and containing chaos attention. You tell yourself you're gathering information that could save billions. You tell yourself you're doing more good alive than dead. You tell yourself that your continued existence, your continued observation, your continued thinking about this problem is valuable. And the insidious thing is that it all sounds so reasonable. Every argument is logical. Every justification makes sense. Every reason not to turn yourself in is valid if you examine it from the right angle. But here's the truth you're avoiding. These aren't your arguments anymore. Tzeentch is the god of plans, schemes, strategies. The architect of fate, the great manipulator. And these rationalizations that sound so logical, so reasonable, so perfectly calibrated to appeal to your intelligence. They're not yours, they're his. The voice has been teaching you. Not with words, it doesn't use words anymore. With pure concept, pure understanding. It's taught you about cognitive reframing, how to take any reality and recast it in terms that support your desired conclusion. Execution becomes waste of potential. You're intelligent, capable, functional. The Imperium is always desperate for competent workers. Executing you removes a productive citizen from the labor pool. That's inefficient, wasteful. Better to live, better to continue working, better to serve even in a compromised state than to die and serve no one. Confession becomes unnecessary hysteria. What would you even confess to? Having strange dreams, seeing unusual colors, drawing symbols. None of that is definitive proof of corruption. You haven't murdered anyone, haven't performed forbidden rituals, haven't built shrines to the dark gods. You're just stressed, ill perhaps, but not corrupted, not really. Going to the Arbites would create panic over nothing, would disrupt the sector's operation, would cause investigations that would waste countless man-hours. Better to wait, better to be certain. Better to gather more evidence before making accusations that might be premature. Corruption becomes uncomfortable evolution. The changes you're experiencing, are they really corruption, or are they growth, development? The unlocking of human potential that the Imperium in its ignorance and fear has labeled as heresy. You can see more now, understand more, perceive reality with greater clarity and depth. Is that corruption, or is that enlightenment? Maybe the Imperium is wrong. Maybe chaos isn't evil, maybe it's just misunderstood. Maybe the God Emperor's crusade against the warp was a mistake born of fear and ignorance. Maybe you're not becoming something worse. Maybe you're becoming something better. Damnation becomes expanded perspective. Who defines damnation anyway? The ecclesiarchy, the Inquisition, institutions that have their own agendas, their own biases, their own reasons to keep humanity ignorant and afraid. What if damnation is just their word for independence, for thinking freely, for refusing to be limited by their narrow definitions of acceptable existence? You've seen beyond the veil now. You've glimpsed the truth of reality. You understand that the material realm is just one layer, that consciousness is more vast and strange than the Imperium teaches. Is that damned? Or is that awakened? The reframing is seamless, perfect. You can feel it happening in real time. Watch as your very thoughts are restructured to support conclusions that serve the corruption. And the horror is that you can't tell what's real anymore. Are these thoughts yours or the voices? Are you being manipulated, or are you genuinely realizing truths the Imperium has hidden? Is your reasoning compromised, or is it clearer than ever? There's no way to know, no objective measure, no untainted perspective from which to judge. Your mind has become a battleground, except you can't tell which side you're on. Can't tell which thoughts are the invaders and which are the defenders. Can't tell if there's even a meaningful distinction anymore. The hope is what kills you, not metaphorically, literally. The hope is the weapon that's being used to murder your soul one piece at a time. You've started to believe you can control this. Look at the evidence. You've been corrupted for 3 months now, and you're still functional, still going to work, still processing manifests. Still you, essentially. The changes have stabilized. Your left eye stopped getting worse 2 weeks ago. The voice is still there, but it's quiet now. Background noise. Easily ignored if you focus. You went 3 days last week without drawing any symbols. 3 whole days, that's progress, that's control. You successfully resisted an intrusive thought yesterday. The voice suggested you alter a specific shipping manifest and you refused. You filed it correctly, exactly as it should be filed, and nothing bad happened. No punishment, no escalation, which means you can resist, which means you have control. Which means maybe, just maybe, you're the one who can survive chaos notice and remain loyal to the Imperium. Maybe you're special that way. Maybe your will is strong enough. Maybe your faith, damaged as it is, still provides some protection. Maybe you're winning, you're not winning. The hope is the anesthetic while the surgery proceeds. Every small victory you experience is planned. Every moment of successful resistance is permitted. Every day you maintain control is a day you're practicing coexistence with the warp. Think about it. If the corruption was overwhelming, if it was constant escalation with no respite, you'd recognize it as the threat it is. You'd turn yourself in out of sheer desperation. You'd seek the Emperor's mercy while you still could. But if the corruption is gradual, with periods of stability and even improvement, if you have small victories to celebrate, if you can point to evidence that you're fighting successfully, then you'll keep fighting. And fighting means staying alive. And staying alive means continuing to serve as a vector, continuing to spread, continuing to damn others. The hope keeps you functional. The hope keeps you patient. The hope keeps you from seeking salvation until salvation is impossible. Tzeentch is the god of hope. Not many people know that. They think of him as the god of change, of magic, of schemes. But hope is his deepest nature. Hope is the belief that things can be different, can be better, can be changed from what they are into what they could be. And hope is what keeps the corrupted from accepting their damnation, keeps them fighting, keeps them believing they can be saved, keeps them alive and functional and spreading the infection. Every small victory you achieve is a planned loss. Every day you successfully resist is a day you normalize the presence of the warp in your consciousness. Every moment you believe you're maintaining control is a moment you're practicing coexistence with corruption. There's no such thing as resisting chaos attention. There's only slow corruption versus fast corruption. And slow corruption is more effective because it lets you spread further before you're identified and eliminated. You're not resisting, you're metastasizing. And the hope that you're winning is the mechanism by which the metastasis proceeds. The mirror forces a confrontation. You've been avoiding mirrors. Not consciously, you just find reasons to look away, to check your appearance in less reflective surfaces, to accept what you see in peripheral vision without examining too closely. But tonight, something makes you stop, makes you really look. The cracked mirror in your hab. The one you salvaged years ago. You stand in front of it with the lumens on, painful to your changed eye but necessary to see the truth. And you see, your left eye is 30% larger than your right. Not dramatically, someone would have to be looking closely to notice, but it's there. The orbital socket has expanded to accommodate the growth. The bone of your skull has reshaped itself. The pupil is vertical, definitely vertical, no ambiguity. It's a slit like a cat's eye, except when you focus it dilates into something more complex. A shape that resembles a keyhole or a glyph. The iris isn't brown anymore. It's that impossible color. The one you can see but can't name. The one that exists outside normal human perception. Swirls of non-color shifting and moving like oil on water. Your veins are visible through your skin, all of them. A network of blue-green lines mapping your circulatory system, except they're not blue-green in normal light. They're luminescent, glowing faintly, and the glow pulses in rhythm with certain thoughts. Think about mathematics and they pulse brighter. Think about patterns, about change, about transformation, and the light intensifies. Your body is responding to your thoughts with visible bioluminescence. Your teeth have sharpened, subtly. You run your tongue over them. When did you last do that? And you cut yourself, taste copper. Your canines are more pronounced. Your molars have edges they didn't have before. When you speak certain words in that other language, the one made of pure concept, your teeth cut your tongue and lips. You've been speaking more carefully lately to avoid the cuts. You thought it was just habit. It's not habit, it's adaptation to a changed physiology. Your shadow is wrong. You move and it follows, but delayed. Half a second, maybe less, but definitely delayed. Like the signal from your body to your shadow has to travel a distance or pass through multiple layers of reality. Your shadow is being cast from somewhere else, from something else. And when you tilt your head listening to the voice, there's a sound. Inside your skull, chittering, clicking, like insects or like clockwork or like both. The sound of thoughts that aren't entirely yours, grinding against thoughts that are, creating noise in the machinery of your consciousness. But here's the horror. You've been seeing yourself in mirrors all along, every day, every morning when you dress for work, every time you pass a reflective surface. You've been looking at this face for weeks, maybe months, and you stop noticing the changes. Your perception has been adjusted, recalibrated. Your brain has been filtering what you see, smoothing out the abnormalities, making you appear normal to yourself. It's a survival mechanism, the corruption protecting itself from detection, making you believe you're still human enough, still normal enough, still fine enough to keep functioning. You've been this monstrous for how long? How many people have seen you like this? How many have looked at you with these obvious, undeniable changes and said nothing? Why hasn't anyone reported you? You think about your coworkers, the way they avoid you, the way they've been avoiding you for weeks. They saw, they've been seeing, they know. So why haven't the Arbites come for you? The answer crystallizes with horrible clarity. Because you've been making them not report you, unconsciously, automatically, with the same gifts that let you predict random events and understand complex patterns. You've been manipulating probability, making people look away at crucial moments, suggesting through psychic pressure that you're not worth reporting, adjusting the attention of everyone around you so they notice you just enough to avoid you but not enough to act. You've been protecting your own corruption without even knowing you were doing it. The survival instinct of the infection itself, operating through you, using your growing abilities to ensure its own propagation. You step back from the mirror, look at your reflection from a distance. A stranger looks back, a thing that used to be human, a transition point between one state of existence and another, and you realize the person you were is gone. That person died weeks ago, maybe months ago, probably the moment you looked at that symbol for 3 seconds and wondered. Everything since then has been the long process of the corpse recognizing it's dead. You've been rationalizing, making excuses, finding logical reasons to continue existing. But the truth is simpler and more horrible. You don't want to die because it doesn't want you to die. And you can't tell the difference anymore between what you want and what it wants. Your desires have been colonized. Your thoughts have been infiltrated. Your will has been subsumed into something larger. You're not resisting corruption. You're experiencing corruption while being given the illusion that you're resisting it. The architecture of denial is complete, perfect, unbreakable from the inside. Chaos doesn't force you to choose damnation. It makes damnation feel like the reasonable choice. It makes you the architect of your own fall and gives you logic and hope as you're building materials. And by the time you realize what's happened, you're already standing in a structure you built yourself, wondering when the walls went up. You could still turn yourself in, theoretically. Walk to the Arbeit station. Confess everything, accept execution, but you won't. Not because you can't, because you don't want to, and that's the final nail in the coffin of your humanity. The moment you stop wanting salvation is the moment salvation becomes impossible. You are damned, not because chaos forced you, not because you had no choice, not because you were weak, because you made 10,000 small choices, each reasonable in isolation, that together led you here. And now the person who could have chosen differently no longer exists. You look in the mirror one more time. The thing looking back smiles, and its teeth are very, very sharp. The Inquisition is coming. You know this 3 days before anyone else. Not from official channels. The Inquisition doesn't announce itself through Administratum data streams. You know because you see it, in the patterns, in the flow of information through the Hive's networks. Requisition orders for Arbeit's reinforcements, medical servitor deployments to quarantine facilities, subtle shifts in power allocation to the upper Hive levels, transit lockdown protocols being updated, crematorium fuel supplies being tripled. Each data point means nothing in isolation. Together they form a pattern, and you read patterns now the way other people read text. The Inquisition is coming to your Hive level. They're looking for heretics, for symbols, for the corrupted. They're looking for you. You have 72 hours, maybe less. The panic hits first. Pure animal terror. The Inquisition doesn't arrest, doesn't interrogate, doesn't offer trials or mercy or second chances. They purge everyone in the contaminated area, everyone who might have seen something, everyone who might have been exposed, guilty and innocent alike. Better to kill 1,000 faithful than let one heretic escape. You've heard stories, everyone has. Entire Hab sections burned. thousands executed on suspicion. Bodies stacked in the reclamation furnaces until the smoke turns black with burning human fat. This is what's coming. This is what you deserve. And your first instinct, your very first thought is run. Get to the transit tubes. Move to another sector, another hive, another world if possible. The Imperium is vast. You could disappear. Millions of people disappear every day, swallowed by the bureaucratic noise, lost in the grinding machinery of galactic civilization. You could run, you could hide, you could survive. But then between one heartbeat and the next, something shifts. A moment of clarity, except it's not clarity at all. It's the opposite. It's the final veil being torn away. The last pretense of humanity burning off like morning fog. You realize something. You don't want to be saved. Sit with that for a moment, really understand it, not you can't be saved. Not it's too late for salvation. Not the corruption is too advanced. You don't want to be saved. The person you were 3 months ago would have wanted rescue, would have begged for the Emperor's mercy, would have welcomed the Arbeitsbolltraund as liberation from corruption. But that person is gone. And the person you are now, the thing wearing your name and your face and your memories like a skin, doesn't want to go back. The power you've gained. You tell yourself it's a curse, but is it? Really? You can see what others can't. Understand what others will never comprehend. Perceive reality in its raw, unfiltered truth instead of the comfortable lie the Imperium maintains. Is that curse? Or is that gift? The visions aren't madness. They're seeing the universe as it actually exists beneath the thin veneer of physical law. The warp is real, more real than the material realm. The material realm is just the crust on an ocean of infinite possibility, and you can see that ocean now. Imperium isn't righteous. You've always known this dimly in the way every imperial citizen knows it but never speaks it. The Imperium is cruel, brutal. It grinds up human lives by the billions and calls it necessary. It enforces ignorance. It punishes curiosity. It murders anyone who asks too many questions. The God Emperor, blessed be his name, isn't absent because he's protecting humanity from some distant throne. He's absent because he's gone. Your changing eye can see this now. You've been in the Ecclesiarchy Chapel. You've stood before the icons and images, and you've seen the truth. There's nothing there. No divine presence. No holy light. No protection radiating from those gold-plated statues and stained glass picts, just emptiness. Just the desperate faith of billions pouring into a void and getting nothing back. The Emperor is a corpse. He's been a corpse for 10,000 years, and every prayer spoken in his name is a cry into darkness that goes unanswered. Except it's not unanswered, is it? Because the warp listens. The entities in the immaterium respond when called. They offer power, knowledge, transformation, change. They offer something the Corpse Emperor hasn't offered in millennia: attention. These thoughts crystallize in your mind with the weight of revelation, the certainty of truth finally understood. Except they're not your thoughts. Are they? Can you tell anymore? The voice has been speaking these concepts for weeks, months, gently and persistently. And now they feel like your own conclusions, your own understanding, your own choice, but they're not. They never were. This is what Tzeentch does. He doesn't force. He convinces. He makes corruption feel like enlightenment, makes damnation feel like apotheosis. And you, intelligent, curious, always needing to understand, you're the perfect canvas for his art. The moment of horrifying honesty comes like a knife to the gut. I don't want to go back to not knowing. You say it aloud, in your hab, in the darkness, with your changed eye seeing the patterns of warp currents swirling through the walls. I don't want to unsee this. Your voice sounds strange. When did it develop that harmonic, that resonance that makes the air vibrate? I don't want to be limited by ignorance again. And it's true, it's true. This isn't the voice speaking through you. This is you, the core of what you've become, speaking your genuine desire. You've seen beyond the veil. You've glimpsed the machinery of reality. You understand things that theologians spend lifetimes failing to grasp. And the idea of going back, of being made to go back, of having this knowledge ripped away and replaced with comfortable blindness, that's more terrifying than any punishment the Inquisition could inflict. Death isn't what you fear. Ignorance is what you fear. And that's how you know you're damned. Really, truly, irreversibly damned. Because the corruption has stopped being something happening to you and become something you're actively choosing. You pray. For the first time in 3 months, you pray consciously and deliberately. But not to the Emperor. You stand in the center of your hab, lights off. Your left eye open, seeing the warp directly now, the physical walls of the room transparent to your perception. You spread your arms, not the posture of imperial prayer that's kneeling, hands folded, head bowed in submission. This is different, arms wide, head back, spine straight, the posture of acceptance, of welcome, of invitation, and you pray not in words. Words are too limiting, too linear. Too bound to three-dimensional space and one-directional time. You pray in mathematics, in formulae that describe impossible shapes, in equations that calculate the angles between dimensions. Your mouth moves, and sounds emerge that human vocal cords shouldn't be able to produce. Harmonics that resonate not just in air but in the substrate of reality itself. Syllables that are also concepts. Phonemes that carry meaning compressed into pure information. You're speaking the language of the warp, the tongue that predates humanity, the words that shaped reality before physical law congealed into its current form. And as you pray, as you speak these impossible words and trace these forbidden equations with your voice, something responds. The presence you've felt for months solidifies. Becomes specific, individual, attentive. The voice isn't a voice anymore. It's a being, an entity, a shard of something vast and terrible and impossibly ancient, reaching down through layers of reality to touch your mind directly. Not Tzeentch himself. The changer of ways doesn't speak directly to individual mortals. You're not that important. You're not even a speck of dust in the cosmic scheme of his plans, but you're speaking to something that serves him. A demon, perhaps, or a pattern of warp energy that's learned to think, or some other form of existence that human language has no category for. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it answers. Your mind expands, or disintegrates. There's no difference anymore. Expansion and destruction are the same thing at this scale. Information floods into your consciousness, not gradually, not gently, all at once like a dam breaking. You understand the layout of the warp currents around your hive, the eddies and flows of psychic energy, the thin places where reality bleeds, the locations where others like you exist, bright points of corruption scattered through the hab sections like stars in the void. You understand the plan. Not all of it. You could live 1,000 years and not understand all of it, but your part, your purpose, the data corruption you've been spreading, the manifests you've altered, the reports you've contaminated with symbols and subtle errors. They're all part of a cascade, a probability engine spanning decades. One corrupted data slate will reach a merchant vessel in 3 years. That vessel will trade with a noble house in 5 years. That noble house has a minor member, 17 years old right now, completely ignorant of her future, who will become an inquisitor in 20 years. She'll make different decisions because of the corrupted thought patterns planted by your data streams, different investigation priorities, different resource allocations, different guard regiment deployments, which leads to different battle outcomes, which destabilizes a sector, which creates opportunity for a warp rift, which allows a demonic incursion, which claims millions of souls, all because you drew a symbol in the margin of a manifest. You see the timeline, see the branching possibilities. See the way your small actions ripple outward through decades of cause and effect. And you understand this is beautiful, not morally beautiful, not beautiful in any human sense, but mathematically beautiful, aesthetically perfect. The elegance of a plan so complex, so multi-layered, so dependent on infinite variables all aligning correctly that its very existence is a work of art. You're part of something larger than yourself, larger than your hive, larger than your world. You're a single calculation in an equation that spans the galaxy. And that's enough. That's more than enough. The person you were wanted to matter, wanted significance. Wanted to believe their life had meaning beyond processing manifests in a cubicle until death. And now you do matter. You are significant. Your existence has meaning. The meaning is damning billions of souls over the course of 50 years, but it's meaning nonetheless. The prayer ends. The connection fades. You collapse to your knees, gasping, your body remembering to breathe only after several seconds of oxygen deprivation. Your left eye is glowing, bright enough to cast shadows. Bright enough that if anyone saw you right now, there would be no question, no doubt, no possibility of explaining this away as illness or stress. You are obviously corrupted, undeniably changed, and you feel peace. For the first time in 3 months, you feel peace. The struggle is over. The resistance has ended. The internal war between what you were and what you're becoming has been decided. You've chosen, not because you were forced, not because you had no other option, but because you wanted this. You wanted the power, the knowledge, the meaning, and you're willing to pay the price. You have 72 hours before the Inquisition arrives. You spend the first 12 making a decision. The others, the corrupted, the vectors like you scattered through the Hab sections, Marius, Magistri Yelm, little Kalia and the dozens of children she's contaminated, the 47 others you've identified through your expanding awareness. The Inquisition will kill them all, not just them, everyone. The Inquisition doesn't have the time or resources for surgical precision. They'll quarantine and purge. Tens of thousands will die, maybe hundreds of thousands if they decide the contamination has spread too far. Most of those deaths will be innocents, people who never saw a symbol, never had a corrupted thought, never drew the attention of anything in the warp, but they'll die anyway. Because proximity is contamination in the Inquisition's calculus. Better to burn clean flesh than risk leaving infected tissue. You could warn them, the innocents, give them time to flee, to evacuate, to get out before the purge begins, but you don't. Instead, you warn the corrupted. You begin encoding messages in the Administratum data streams. Using your gifts, your knowledge of patterns, your ability to manipulate probability, your expanding psychic awareness, to send warnings to the others like you. The Inquisition comes in 60 hours. Hide, flee, survive. You're not subtle about it. You don't have time for subtle. You burn your instructions directly into the data, using symbols and concepts that only the corrupted can perceive. The uncorrupted will see nothing. Glance past the messages without noticing. Their minds will slide off the information like water off oil. But those who have been noticed by chaos, they'll see. They'll understand, they'll know. You work through the night, sending message after message, building a network of the damned, creating lines of communication between vectors who don't even know each other exists. By morning, you've contacted 17 of them. By midday, 34. By evening, all 47. And through them, you reach others, hundreds. Thousands perhaps scattered across the hive. You're organizing them, not consciously. You don't have the authority or knowledge to organize anything. But the information flows through you. Instructions from something higher. Patterns from something with a larger view. You're being used, and you don't mind. Because being used means being useful, means having purpose. 50 hours before the Inquisition arrives, there's a knock on your door. You know who it is before you open it. You can sense her aura. Young, bright, faithful, an Arbeitsofficer, junior rank. Maybe 25 years old. Her name is Kari. You don't know how you know that, you just do. The knowledge flows into your mind like water into a depression. She's investigating reports of corruption. Following up on rumors, doing her duty. She's young enough to still believe the Imperium is righteous. Old enough to have seen enough horror that righteousness requires deliberate, exhausting effort. She's earnest, dedicated, everything you used to admire. And she's standing at your door, one hand on her bolt pistol, asking if she can come in. This is the moment, the last moment, the final point where you could choose differently, you could confess. Right now, tell her everything. She would execute you, quick, professional, you die relatively pure. The corruption would end with you, more or less. Marius and the others would have to be found and dealt with separately, but at least you wouldn't corrupt anyone else. You could choose martyrdom. You could choose the Emperor's mercy, even though you've seen with your own eye that the Emperor isn't there to give mercy. You could choose to stop. You don't. You invite her in. She enters your hab cautiously. Her hand never leaves her bolt pistol. She's been trained for this. taught to recognize corruption, to never let her guard down. But she's also been trained to find obvious corruption. Tentacles, mutations, madness, the theatrical horror of advanced chaos taint. She's not trained to recognize what you've become. The subtle corruption, the intelligent damnation, the kind that wears a human face and speaks in a human voice and looks almost normal if you don't examine too closely. I'm investigating reports of unusual activity, she says, professional, clipped. Symbols, strange behavior. Have you seen anything unusual? You look at her with both eyes. The right eye, she sees that one, sees a tired clerk, middle-aged, unremarkable, maybe a bit ill but nothing alarming. The left eye, she doesn't quite see it. Her gaze skips over it, slides away. Her brain registers something wrong but can't process what, so it substitutes the memory of a normal eye instead. You're using your gifts without thinking about it now, manipulating her perception, making her see what she expects to see instead of what's actually there. Nothing unusual, you say. Your voice is calm, normal. The harmonics are there but subtle. She doesn't consciously hear them, but unconsciously, her hand relaxes on her bolt pistol. You speak in a tone that makes the air vibrate, not obviously, not dramatically, just slightly, just enough that her nervous system registers a subsonic pressure, just enough that her threat assessment recalculates. I appreciate you checking, you continue. We all want to stay safe. If I see anything suspicious, I'll report it immediately. You're lying, obviously lying. But the lie is wrapped in psychic suggestion, in probability manipulation, in the subtle adjustment of her attention and assessment. She should see through this. She's trained, faithful, strong, but you're not using force. You're using compatibility. Part of her, a small part but growing, wants to believe you. Wants to believe this investigation is unnecessary. Wants to believe she can file a negative report and move on to less disturbing duties. Everyone has that part. The part that wants things to be okay. The part that prefers comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. You're speaking directly to that part. And then you show her a symbol, not overtly. You don't draw it in the air or pull out a data slate with corruption marked on it. You just think about it. And your left eye reflects what you're thinking, projects it into the space between you and her. For a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, she sees it. The same symbol you saw 3 months ago, the same impossible geometry, the same angles that don't quite resolve into coherent shapes. Her eyes go distant, unfocused. Something cracks. You can see it in her aura. The bright gold of faith developing hairline fractures. The certainty she's built her life on shifting just slightly, just enough. She blinks, refocuses, looks at you with confusion like she's forgotten why she's here. I should go, she says. Thank you for your time, citizen. She leaves quickly, like she's fleeing something she can't name. And you stand in your hab, door still open, watching her walk down the corridor with a sick mixture of triumph and horror. You've just made your first deliberate convert, not by accident, not by passive contamination, but through active choice, through consciously using your corruption as a weapon. Marius Magistri Yelm, Kalia, they were infected by proximity, by your existence, not by your intent, but Kari. You chose to corrupt her, chose to plant that seed. Chose to crack her faith and let something else seep in through the fissures. And it felt right, not morally right. You're past the point where morality has meaning, but correct, like a calculation producing the expected result, like a puzzle piece sliding into place. You are no longer a victim of chaos. You are not someone corruption happened to. You are chaos's agent, willingly, deliberately, enthusiastically. You are a servant of the changer of ways, and this is who you've chosen to become. The remaining hours before the Inquisition arrives, you spend in focused activity. You encode more messages, contact more corrupted, build more network connections. You're creating infrastructure, lines of communication that will persist after you're gone. Because you know, with the certainty that comes from the voice, from the patterns, from the gifts, that you won't survive the purge. You're too obvious now. Too changed. The Inquisition will identify and eliminate you, but the network will survive. The seeds you've planted will grow. The cascade you've started will continue. Your death is acceptable, expected even. You're not meant to ascend to demonhood or become some champion of chaos. You're meant to be infrastructure, to create the conditions for others to thrive. You're a stepping stone, a sacrifice, a calculated loss in a game too vast for you to see. And you're at peace with that. This is meaning. This is purpose. This is significance. You matter because you're part of something larger than yourself. And in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where human life is worth less than the bullets used to end it, where quintillions live and die in complete obscurity, where individual existence is utterly, cosmically meaningless. That's enough. That's more than enough. You corrupted a child. You damned innocence. You spread the infection of chaos through your sector like plague. And you did it willingly, not because you were forced, not because you had no choice, but because you wanted this. Because damnation in the end felt like apotheosis. And that's the most horrifying truth of all. When the Inquisition arrives 36 hours later, you're ready. You're in your cubicle, processing manifests, drawing symbols in the margins, making the corruption obvious because there's no point in hiding anymore. They come with flamers and bolt weapons and the absolute certainty of the righteous. They see you, see your eye, see your aura if any of them are psychers, see what you've become, and they don't hesitate. The Boltrown takes you in the chest, explosive, designed to destroy utterly. You have a half-second of awareness after impact, a moment where your consciousness lingers even as your body comes apart. In that moment, you see the warp directly. No physical eye mediating the perception, just your soul, naked and raw, perceiving reality as it truly is. And you see Tzeentch, not the god himself. You're not that significant, but a fraction of his awareness. A sliver of his vast, incomprehensible consciousness turned toward you for a microsecond. And in that microsecond, you understand. You were never important, never special, never anything more than a tool, but the plan is beautiful. The cascade continues. The probability streams flow. The corrupted you saved will spread further. The network you built will grow. And 50 years from now, when an inquisitor makes a choice that dooms millions, a tiny part of that choice will trace back to a symbol you drew in a manifest margin. You were a butterfly wing in a chaos storm, and the storm is only beginning. Your last thought as consciousness fragments into the warp is satisfaction. You mattered. And in the end, that was all you ever really wanted. You're dead. Your body was incinerated. Your name was struck from all records. Your cubicle was sterilized with sacred fire. Every data slate you ever touched was destroyed. Every person you worked near was interrogated. Many were executed. All were marked as potentially contaminated. The Inquisition doesn't take chances. But let's talk about what happened after you died. Because death isn't the end of this story. Death is barely the middle. 3 weeks after your execution, Marius is still alive. He saw your warning, fled to the Underhive before the Inquisition arrived. He's hiding in the toxic waste levels, the places so deep even the Arbites don't patrol regularly. He's changed more than you ever did. His transformation accelerated after your death, like something was holding him back and your removal freed him to become. Both his eyes are wrong now. His hands have too many joints. When he speaks, his voice harmonizes with itself, producing chords that hurt to hear. He's found others, dozens of corrupted hiding in the deep dark. They recognize each other by the way reality bends around them, by the colors they can see that don't exist. Marius is building something. A cult, small, insignificant, probably doomed to eventual discovery and extermination. But in the 3 weeks since your death, that cult has grown to 87 members, and they're recruiting. 6 months after your execution, little Kalia is 11 years old. The Inquisition never found her. She's too young, too innocent looking. Her changes are internal, psychological, invisible to casual inspection. She still lives with her mother. Still goes to the learning centers. Still plays with other children, but she's teaching them, showing them patterns. Games that are really rituals, songs that are really invocations, symbols that are really doorways. By age 11, Kalia has corrupted 234 children. Most don't know they're corrupted. Won't know for years. The seeds are planted deep, dormant, waiting for the right trigger to germinate. Kalia will die at age 19, a Hab structural failure, pure accident, no connection to chaos. But by then she'll have touched thousands of young minds, and those minds will grow up and have children of their own and teach them the games Kalia taught, the patterns, the symbols. Generation after generation, the corruption spreading through genetic and mimetic channels, so subtle that no one notices until it's far too late. 2 years after your execution, Magistrate Yeln is still processing manifests. She was interrogated by the Inquisition, passed their tests, was cleared as uncontaminated. They were wrong. She's more careful than you were. Hides the symptoms better. Never draws visible symbols. Never speaks in forbidden tongues. But she's corrupting data streams on a scale you never imagined. As a magistra, a supervisor with access to thousands of workers' outputs, she can contaminate information on a massive scale. Every manifest she approves, every report she files, every data stream she manages, tiny errors, subtle changes, symbols encoded in metadata that normal humans can't perceive but the corrupted can. She's building a network. Not of people, of information. A web of contaminated data spreading through the Administratum like a virus through a bloodstream. In 2 years, her corrupted data streams have reached 47 worlds. In 5 years, they'll reach 470. The cascade is exponential. 3 years after your execution, someone you never met processes a manifest you corrupted. Her name is Kalin. She's 19. Works in a hive on a different world 3 sectors away from where you died. She's processing shipping data from merchant vessels. Routine, boring, the same work you did. And she sees a symbol in the corner of a manifest, just a geometric pattern, probably a printing error. She stares at it for 3 seconds, wondering, curious. And somewhere in the warp, something vast and terrible turns its attention toward her. She doesn't know about you, will never know your name. Has no idea that the symbol she's seeing was drawn by your hand 3 years ago, corrupted into a data stream by Magistrate Yeln 2 years ago, transmitted through commercial shipping channels, and finally delivered to her data slate this morning. She doesn't know she's part of a chain, a cascade, a probability engine that started with your damnation and continues through hers. All she knows is that she's been having strange dreams lately, and there's a copper taste in her mouth that won't go away. Let's zoom out further. 20 years after your execution, an inquisitor named Covenant investigates a cult on a cardinal world. She's brilliant, thorough, dedicated, everything an inquisitor should be. She's also making decisions based on corrupted information. Not obviously corrupted. Nothing she would detect. But the data streams she's using to guide her investigation, ship movements, supply chains, communication patterns, were all processed through systems Magistrate Yeln contaminated 15 years ago. The errors are tiny. A 0.1% deviation here, a rounding error there, timestamps off by a few seconds. Nothing significant, but those tiny errors add up. They create a distorted picture. They make her see patterns that aren't quite there and miss patterns that are. She makes a choice to investigate Sector Obscurus instead of Sector Tempestus. It's a reasonable choice, based on solid data, defensible to her inquisitorial peers. It's also wrong. The cult she's hunting has a cell in Sector Tempestus, a major one. If she'd investigated there, she would have found them. Stopped them, saved millions. Instead, she goes to Sector Obscurus, finds nothing of significance, wastes 6 months. By the time she realizes her mistake, the cult in Sector Tempestus has grown too large to contain quietly. The Inquisition has to call in the guard. Full military response. Billions of throne gelt wasted. Millions of lives lost. And it all traces back, through 20 years of causation, through infinite branching possibilities, through the butterfly effect magnified across decades, to you. To a symbol you drew in a manifest margin. To 3 seconds of curiosity that damned you and through you damned millions of others. Let's zoom out even further. 50 years after your execution, Sector Metallica destabilizes. Multiple factors contribute: political unrest, economic collapse, warp storms disrupting shipping. None of it obvious, none of it clearly connected to chaos. But underneath, invisible to all but the most paranoid observers, there's a pattern. The unrest started because of resource shortages. The shortages happened because of shipping delays. The delays were caused by Guard regiment redeployments. The redeployments were ordered by an inquisitorial conclave making decisions based on intelligence gathered by Inquisitor Covenant 30 years ago. An Inquisitor Covenant made those decisions based on corrupted data streams. The economic collapse follows. 17 worlds fall into chaos, lowercase c, but it becomes uppercase C soon enough. In the anarchy and desperation, chaos cults flourish. Real ones, powerful ones. The kind that summon demons and open war rifts. The Imperium responds, it has to. But the response is slow because resources were allocated based on intelligence suggesting the threat was elsewhere. By the time the Guard arrives in force, 3 worlds have fallen completely, populations lost, tens of billions dead or corrupted. The Inquisition declares exterminatus on all 3, virus bombs, cyclonic torpedoes, purge by fire, 70 billion human souls extinguished. And you, dead for 50 years, your name forgotten, your existence completely erased from all records. You are part of the causal chain that led to this. Not the whole cause, not even the main cause, but a contributing factor, a butterfly wing in a chaos storm. But let's talk about what really happened after you died. About the other thing, the thing you glimpsed in that microsecond before your consciousness fragmented into the warp. You thought you mattered, you thought you were serving something. You thought your damnation had meaning. You were wrong. 6 weeks after your execution, another servant of Tzeentch arrives in your sector. An actual servant, someone who matters, someone with real power. His name is Architect Voss. He's been serving the Changer of Ways for 43 years. He's a cult leader, a summoner, a psyker of terrifying ability. He has plans within plans within plans, schemes that span decades. Real, significant work that actually advances Chaos's goals in concrete, measurable ways. He heard about the inquisitorial purge, came to see what was important enough to draw their attention. He finds Marius in the Underhive, the cult of 87 that Marius built. Voss looks at them with eyes that have seen the warp directly for decades, eyes that can assess the quality of corruption the way a jeweler assesses gems, and he laughs, not cruelly, not mockingly, with something between pity and amusement. You think you're ascending, he says to Marius, to the whole cult, to the memory of you still lingering in the psychic residue of the Underhive. You're adorable. Voss explains the hierarchy, not to be cruel, just as a matter of education. The way you'd explain to a child that their crayon drawing, while admirable, isn't actually art. At the top, demon princes, the ones who have ascended to demonhood, the ones who matter, the ones Tzeentch actually cares about. There are maybe a few dozen in the entire galaxy. They're the champions, the chosen, the significant, below the great cult leaders, the ones who command demons, wield warp sorcery, and shape fate. There exists another layer of servants. Thousands of psychers, pack-sworn heretics, and manipulators who operate as the true infrastructure of chaos. They bridge the space between the arch-traitors and the mortal world, making the great designs of the dark gods possible. These individuals have actual power, actual influence. And below them are the corrupted embedded within imperial authority. Governors and cardinals, generals and bureaucrats, anyone who commands resources or policy. There are hundreds of thousands of these, perhaps millions. The subtle blades, the infiltrators who shape worlds with a signature or a whispered suggestion. Below them are the common cultists with real utility, fighters, summoners, killers. The millions who enact violence in Tzeentch's name. And at the very bottom, just above untainted humanity, are the data-corrupted vectors like you, like Marius, like the 87 pathetic souls who believe themselves part of something grand. You're not sorcerers. You aren't warriors, you aren't leaders. Your infrastructure, the psychic equivalent of server farms, transmission nodes through which corruption spreads, nothing more. You think Tzeentch noticed you because you're special. Voss asks Marius, his smile almost gentle. He noticed you because you're convenient. The truth is worse than insignificance. The truth is redundancy. You weren't chosen for your unique brilliance. You were chosen because you fit a profile, a category chaos has used for 10,000 years. Somewhere across the Imperium on thousands of Hive worlds, individuals identical to you are drawing symbols in margins, spreading corrupted ideas and believing themselves chosen. Most never reach full cascade. Most are caught early, purged, erased. The ones who get far enough to matter. Statistical anomalies. Marius was one of these anomalies. His corrupted work jumped sectors, created a cascade that rippled across decades. Impressive in a sterile, statistical way, but not special. When he died, 17 other vectors on the same world continued the work. When they died, 73 backups picked it up. The cascade he believed he initiated was only one of 23 parallel operations. If Marius had lived or died differently, if he'd never been corrupted at all, the results would have been nearly identical. Tzeentch doesn't plan with individuals, he plans with probability distributions. If enough vectors exist, one will succeed, maybe several. Marius was a rounding error in a cosmic spreadsheet. When Voss explains this, he doesn't do it to be cruel. He does it because the cult must understand their place, must abandon delusions of ascension or individuality. You're not going to matter, he says. You're going to die, probably soon, probably forgot. And the pattern will continue, because it never depended on you. Marius breaks. He had believed his suffering meant something. He'd believed his damnation was chosen, special, purposeful. Stripped of that illusion, he walks into the toxic sludge of the Underhive and lets it dissolve him. His cult splinters. Some flee, some confess, some continue out of habit. It changes nothing. The cascade continues. Because chaos doesn't need loyalty, it needs probability. And probability always favors the house. Across the Imperium's million worlds, there are 20 quadrillion humans. If a mere 1% are brushed by chaos each year, that's 20 million corrupted individuals annually. 20 million stories like Marius's. 54,000 per day, 37 per minute, every minute. The intimate horror we watched unfold, the corruption of a single human mind, is happening constantly. It never stops. While you read this sentence, someone is seeing their first impossible symbol. Someone is hearing the whisper. Someone is wondering whether their dreams are theirs. And the Imperium knows this. The Inquisition knows they are losing, not dramatically but relentlessly, like water eroding stone. Chaos doesn't win through grand invasions. It wins through attrition. The Imperium survives through numbers alone. For every one corrupted, billions remain pure through enforced ignorance. Not strength, not resilience, ignorance. Because in the Imperium, knowledge is poison. Chaos corruption is contagious through awareness. Thinking about the warp draws the warp's attention. Learning its symbols risks infection. Trying to understand chaos is itself dangerous. Thus, the Imperium has established the only possible doctrine: ignorance is survival. The average citizen knows nothing of the warp beyond superstition. They don't know demons exist. They don't know that ideas can corrupt. They don't know that a dream can damn. This protects them, but also dooms them, because ignorance prevents early detection. By the time someone realizes they are corrupted or someone else notices, it's too late. The infection has already spread. But knowledge cannot be the solution. Teaching people to resist chaos exposes them to the very thing they must resist. There is no safe middle ground. Knowledge is heresy. Ignorance is vulnerability. The Imperium is trapped in an unsolvable equation. Imagine recognizing the early signs of corruption in yourself. A strange symbol, a dream that feels too real, a thought that isn't yours. Who do you tell? The Arbites, they shoot first. The Ecclesiarchy, they purify with fire, a medikey. They'll misdiagnose you or report you. Either way, death follows. A friend. They might report you out of fear, or they might already be corrupted. There is no help, no treatment, no hope. The only cure for corruption is execution, and knowing that ensures that the corrupted hide their symptoms until it is far too late. The Imperium's very defenses guarantee chaos new victims. At what point did Marius lose the ability to choose? When he looked at the symbol, when he wondered about it. Or was the outcome determined earlier, written into the architecture of his mind? Curiosity, empathy, intelligence, pattern recognition, these traits make a person more susceptible. He didn't choose them, he was born with them. If chaos hunts for certain mental profiles, then billions are born pre-damned. The Imperium claims faith protects, but the truth is that personality does or doesn't. And personality is not chosen. Chaos runs on statistical predestination. Marius tried to be good. He tried to help a suffering child. His compassion accelerated her corruption. In the 41st millennium, virtue becomes a vector. Curiosity opens doors to Tzeentch. Despair feeds Nurgle. Beauty invites Slaanesh. Unchecked aggression strengthens Khorne. Every virtue can be weaponized. This is why the Imperium is merciless. Mercy is dangerous. Investigating heresy risks exposure. Showing compassion gives chaos time to work. Better to kill 1,000 innocents than let one heretic hide. A monstrous policy, yet mathematically correct. In the 41st millennium, goodness often causes harm and cruelty often prevents it. Morality becomes inverted. Righteousness becomes indistinguishable from brutality. This is the true horror. Survival demands evil, and it's still not enough. Over 10,000 years, at conservative rates, 200 billion souls have fallen to chaos. The population remains vast, replenished by relentless birth and conquest, but the loss is steady, compounding. The Imperium is not winning. It is not stable. It is decaying slowly enough that the decay feels like equilibrium. Every decade, another world is lost to warp storms or uprising or demonic breach. Every century, another dozen slip into unrecoverable ruin. The High Lords know. The Inquisition knows. Guilliman knows there is no solution. The Webway Project, the Emperor's attempt to free humanity from the warp, failed during the heresy. The only hope humanity ever had died in that moment. Now there is only delay, only attrition. Humanity will fall not from weakness but from mathematics. No empire can survive exponential corruption forever. The Imperium is circling the drain. Chaos doesn't win because it's powerful. It wins because it notices. And in a galaxy of quadrillions, something interesting happens every moment. Some mind wonders. Some soul flickers strangely. Some thought opens a door. Chaos only needs attention, a glimpse, a whisper, and once noticed, you are already slipping. You don't have to be wicked, you just have to be a little too curious, a little too intelligent, a little too imaginative. And now you've spent thousands of words contemplating chaos, thinking about how it works, wondering how it corrupts. You've considered its symbols, its mechanisms, its strategies. You've asked the question, and wondering. Wondering is the doorway. How would you know if chaos had noticed you? That strange dream, that symbol you keep seeing, that thought that arrives too perfectly formed, that metallic taste, that sense of being observed. You wouldn't know, not until far too late. Denying corruption is what the corrupted do. Believing you might be corrupted is also what the corrupted do. There is no safe conclusion, no safe thought. The very act of wondering is contamination, so don't think too hard about it. Don't look for patterns. Don't imagine the symbol. If you dream tonight, if something whispers, if something watches, tell yourself it's nothing. Tell yourself it's stress. Tell yourself it's coincidence. It probably is, probably. After all, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and 37 souls per minute discovering that the war has already begun inside their minds, long before they ever realized they were fighting.